Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Zachingo Finch, and I am unfortunately without my illustrious co-host, Gregory Elliott, today. Me and Greg work with one another, and he unfortunately has had some technical difficulties. And the reason I point out that that we work with one another is we've both been in a team day all day, and Greg's headphones and everything he uses to record are currently locked away in an office building that he is unable to access. So it is me riding solo today. I myself have also not been without technical difficulties. Relatively sure this is the third or fourth time I've attempted this podcast. And that is usually due to my own technical inability, which is funny when I tell you that we both work in an IT department. Anyway, you're not here for the woes of Zach and Greg, unless it's football related. So let's crack on, shall we? We have a game today. The first game after the end of the Russell Martin legacy. We are now in a new age, an unknown age. We still do not know who we are going to have in charge for the rest of the season. But what we do know is that Simon Rusk, the under-21s manager, is in charge today. I would like to apologise personally for Simon Rusk for consistently referring to him as the under-21s manager, as both me and Greg forgot his name yesterday, which was less than ideal, as you can imagine. So obviously Greg is going to be thrilled that he has another midweek fixture to go to where he can deal with some very overtired children at the end of hopefully not another defeat, but let's face it, probably another defeat. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the manager situation because, well, it's quite frankly on everybody's lips and it's what we're all thinking about. We'll have a look at the press conference and what was covered and what we've got to look forward to for the rest of this game. And also what the score predictions and how I think the game will play out in sort of the final part. So let's crack on, shall we? So one of the things that obviously we've seen on social media, which obviously isn't the best source of information for everything, but sometimes can be, is Sky Sports reporting around the Spurs game and the humiliating way that it played out in still probably the worst performance I've ever seen in a Saints shirt. Actually, somehow worse than the 9-0s, at least the first half, is the thing that pushed the ownership into finally getting rid of Russell Martin. Now, we've been a bit Russell Martin ambiguous on this podcast, kind of almost by design. And it's because I can understand both arguments and I've struggled to kind of see where I landed. By the Chelsea game, I think we'd firmly landed on the fact that he was gone and should be going, but I also couldn't see Sports Republic making a decision. It seemed very out of character for them to do so. And the confirmation that it is that game that pushed the ownership into the decision and that they were not actively looking for a manager beforehand really proves my point. And what I thought and hoped in the back of my mind was maybe a plan on how to deal with the footballing side of their business actually seems to be far more of a scramble that is hoping that maybe they can get a manager in the middle of the season. And it's hard because who wants to take this job? But also the Russell Martin's position did become completely untenable. So yeah, it's just really not helping the ownership sort of be shined under a good light. I know that a lot of us are critical and for good reasons, especially when it comes to the sort of the footballing side. They are trying very hard and doing a lot commercially. The problem is that it's all well and good having the Dell pub and it's all well and good remaking the entirety of the surrounding area around the stadium and creating all of these entertainment zones. If you've got nobody coming to watch the football, it doesn't really matter. And I think the problem is that you will eventually get people start to vote on their feet. And I think you saw that with about half of the stadium leaving. And that's no disrespect to anyone that didn't. I can understand it completely. And also shout out to the fans that did, because it was a very difficult situation to stay in. I know Greg was one of them. I think he considers it character building that his kids see how terrible Saints can be whilst also enjoying the heights of a Wembley playoff final. So, yeah, it's just upsetting, and hopefully they're going to plug that footballing sort of hole at some point, because you can't run a business where the primary sort of the primary product is football, and they seem to have kind of almost forgotten that. So I guess we'll have to see and hope that they are learning lessons. Um, I am not too confident that's the case, but all we have now is hope to cling on to. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Danny Roll, and apparently talks are progressing with him, but there are supposedly also talks happening with every other manager under the sun. Apparently, he's keen to leave. Some of the things that I find slightly bizarre about this decision, and sort of, I guess, the overall level of support. The good thing is there is a large and overall level of support for it, which means that, hopefully the fans will get behind him straight away, myself included. To be honest, I'll back anyone that ends up in charge. But I feel like it's a realistic choice and target for our club. And as much as it's very strange to me that after complaining that Russell Martin was only a championship manager, we are getting in a championship manager who is also unproven in the Premier League. And there seems to be a lot of nostalgia around his ties to the club, which, in my opinion, are a completely different club to when he was here. And I'm sure he would probably say the same, and he might still have an affinity for the club. It is the man who was supposedly known as the brains of Hasenhüttl, and he's done a fantastic job with Sheffield Wednesday. It does also reek of preparing for the championship, which means that we all seem to have collectively decided that relegation is happening. Which, let's face it, we all kind of know anyway. We need to crack and beat some crazy, outrageous records to stay up. And I very much doubt that we're going to be able to do that. And it very much seems like a build for the future. And maybe, if we end up down next year, if we do put the work in to then come back up, it will be in the automatics, because there seems to be a lot forgotten that we were fourth. We had to win a playoff final to get our position in the Premier League, and it is becoming more and more evident. But, under a different system, under a different style of play, maybe some of those players that haven't sort of kicked into life can kick into life. But it does have me worried about more than a few things, especially the January transfer window. If we have no director of football, I'm just hoping that, a lot of the scouting and who we are getting in is being done somewhere else other than directly by what was Russell Martin's management team, because we're now in a situation where we are potentially have a load of people on a list that are no longer going to suit the way that the new manager comes in and wants to play. And I know that they want to keep it sort of similar and not deviate too far, but needs must when it comes to the adaptability of the Premier League. Either way, it's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be something different to watch other than hopefully just decay, which unfortunately is kind of what we've seen over the last couple of months, and that's not due to, I think, a lack of trying and ultimately stubbornness of Russell Martin. He paid the price of that, and I wish him well. He was a really, really likable guy. I think that's why I felt so strange about the whole thing, is because I was kind of sad to see him go, because it was he did bring a level of togetherness into the club that I think we should all be grateful for, and the players hopefully are grateful for, and that we have a group of players now, most of whom are still very together, still willing to fight for one another, and hopefully that is something that whoever comes in, whether it be Danny Rowe or any of the other outrageous names on the list, hopefully they can take that and use it to build something. However, first of all, it's just a tiny little game against the Liverpool, who, as proven, despite getting a red card on the weekend, managed to pull back a draw. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one. And I'll talk about the press conference right after a word from our partners at Zencaster. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencaster came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all of the ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster. Right, so back to the exciting stuff with the football. Obviously, it's the press conference time, and thanks to Alfie House always for his coverage. Daily Echo is an infinite source of useful information for pretty much anyone. And part of that is making sure you ask the right questions. And part of that is the fans as well who ask Alfie to ask the right questions. So thanks to all of you too. So, judging by this press conference with Simon Rusk, he seemed completely taken surprise, as much as the next guy, apart from every single one of us in the stadium, that he has suddenly taken charge of the team. And it's been a bit hectic because obviously Monday was the players' off day, and I think that was probably a good thing for them mentally. The fact that they've been able to sort of have that day to process everything that happened at the weekend, process losing their boss, because they're human at the end of the day. It's very strange, especially if they got on with him, which a lot of the players did, and kind of then deal with some of the anxieties as to what's coming next, and then go in today and training. Because I much prefer, if I get some stressful news personally, I much prefer to have a day to kind of process it before I'm then shoved back in a working environment. Whereas obviously now obviously it's very different with footballers, because this is a unfortunately common theme for a lot of them, and will be a common thing for them in their careers. But I think it's been nothing but a good thing to have that gap. There is obviously a negative that comes with that, which is there hasn't been a lot of time to prepare for tonight. And Simon Rusk himself said that he's hoping to prepare a plan for tonight. What that means, I do not know, because it probably means there wasn't a huge plan for today previously that any of the players had worked on, which is kind of worrying, because I'd have hoped that they'd have planned a few more games in advance. Or it's the fact that they are kind of scrapping everything and going back to step one. So yeah, I think what we can expect is that some football is definitely going to happen, and it's going to be some football against one of the absolute powerhouses of the world at the moment, which is Liverpool. So he seems confident he can come up with something, which is nice to hear. I'd love to see it on the pitch, mind you. And he said he's going to work with some of the players to try and figure that out, which I think is a sort of interesting tidbit, because it means that who is going to be the players that he works with to make that decision? Is it going to be democratic around the table, or do you think he's going to sort of speak to some of the leaders? I personally would like to see Lallana in this game, and I would like to see Lallana sort of leading from the front and trying to show a head of maturity in a situation that's quite difficult. You've got a couple of the other players that have been here for manager firings and relegations and stuff that hopefully can keep the mentality to go through it. But some of those players were also playing Sunday, so who knows what will happen. But it will be interesting to see what the team sheet will be like, and it's probably one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most, because maybe we'll see some surprises. Maybe it'll be something different. Maybe we'll finally see sort of Tool, Paul, and Archer in the team after hoping for it for years. Something we never saw under Russell Martin's reign. So yeah, that will be that. You can tell it's a bit of a rush job for Simon Russ, because he seems very excited to get back to his day job, and was very adamant that he had absolutely no interest in taking the manager's job, but is also excited to be able to step up and take on a job in the Premier League, even if it's for a day. The fact that he has no plans to be in charge for Fulham implies that we are at least somewhere down the line with negotiations with a manager, whoever that may be. The only problem I have with that is, again, sort of how much we pay in for that. How does that look? Again, it's all the uncertainties. I think it's just naturally we fear it, but then it could end up being that we get in, a new manager by the weekend and end up winning. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. It will be interesting for all of us nonetheless. And I think that for tonight, all we can do is back him and back whoever he picks, and hope that we put on a performance that is better than what we have seen in previous games. All right, Matt, is at this rate, anything less than a drubbing by 5 goals is considered a bit of a win, right? So he said there's no more injury concerns in the squad other than what we've already expected. But to be honest, I do wonder, with him barely being able to have a conversation with most of the senior players, whether or not he knows. One of the confirmations was obviously around we didn't know whether or not Aaron Ramsdale was back in the team. I think all of us can agree that maybe putting him as a pundit on our game as much as it probably seemed like a nice idea at the time, I am baffled that it was greenlit by anybody at the club or greenlit in the background. It seemed I know I can only speak from like a sort of personal experience, but that seemed like a horrible situation to be in, and probably would have much rather been able to be with his teammates than kind of having to mumble his way through and talk about how much he likes the manager, only to then sort of 30 minutes later Russ be given his P45. So very, very, very strange. But hopefully he'll be back in the squad soon. We desperately need some sort of stability in goal that cannot be provided by our current goalkeepers. And I do wonder, considering how long we've got to wait for Bazunu to get back, whether or not we even look to get another goalkeeper in January or move some of them on. Just a strange situation because we want that, we need that area shored up. But also, how many other clubs are in a situation where they were picking their fourth goalkeeper in the last couple of years? Very, very bizarre. But I certainly think he was better in goal than he is a pundit. That's just a personal opinion, but I'm excited to have him hopefully back. But I think that it might be after this game. It was also nice to see Simon Russ talk a bit about our youth squad and sort of say that he's got some names that he didn't want to name. Hopefully, that's because he's keeping his cards close to his chest and doesn't want to let all of the other teams know about players that are really good. And maybe we have a few more Tyler Dibblings coming through the academy. And I think Greg has spoken about this a little bit before, and some of the reasoning as to why our academy suddenly seems to be producing grade A talents again. And that's, I think, another reason for Sports Republic to understand why we need to keep the position in the Premier League, because it is far more enticing and to keep those sort of star players from a young level in an academy if your club is Premier League than to consistently yo-yo up and down. And yeah, maybe we'll see a few cameos. I don't think there's really a lot to lose. I know it's technically quarter-final of a cup, but I don't think there's a huge amount of expectations that we're going to go out and beat Liverpool. So who knows? Yeah, that was pretty much the end of the press conference. That is where I think that he did the best of his ability in this situation. And I think he's explained the situation as best he can. And all we can really do today is get behind whatever team is picked and hopefully bring a bit more of a positive atmosphere after a period of time that turned a little bit more toxic. However, flip side, do completely understand where the criticisms of Sports Republic come in. So let's listen to a word from our partners at the Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcast. Right, so we're almost at the end of our show today. However, I want to speak a little bit about the game tonight. I was looking at trying to predict lineups, and other than obviously potentially Ramsdale missing and us ending up having Alex McCarthy in goal, it's going to be really difficult because we don't really know how we're going to line up. And if it's the players deciding, and that, we could see Ronnie Edwards and get a look in, we could see Bella Kotchap on the field. I very much doubt that, simply because he refused to play for the under-21s and it's the under-21s manager running the shop. But who knows? Stranger things have happened, as we keep alluding to. It's a very strange time for the club until we have that level of stability in. So yeah, it's difficult, but I'm hoping that whatever we put out, all of those players are there to give 100%, and it is to make up, I guess, for some of the most recent performances and really show that if it was the system that was the problem, show us what you can do on the field without the system. However, I have a feeling that it will probably be a similar system because they're not used to playing any other way at the moment. I don't think Liverpool will put out a full strength squad. I don't think they probably think they need to because of everything coming thick and fast and obviously the state of the club currently. So my prediction personally will be 2-1 Liverpool. My co-host, my podcast co-host today, Gregory, isn't here, but I know for a fact that the man reeks of optimism and to this day has never predicted a Saints loss. So he will probably say the reverse of that, a 2-1 win to Saints, which is, I'm pretty sure, the same as his last time round. Where are those goals coming from? For me personally, I don't mind where. I just want to see us get a goal and not be absolutely dropped. However, it is a game against Liverpool on a Wednesday night, and that traditionally doesn't bode well for us. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me today, everybody. It's been a bit of a weird one. It's been a while since we've had to do a solo episode, but I've thoroughly enjoyed going through and ranting, and but as much as I've also enjoyed that, it's been a shame to miss out on my bants with Greg. But we should be back to some normal content from tomorrow. I believe we've got our preview for the Fulham game tomorrow, and our crossover is Friday. We've got some changing around of the schedule, and then we'll be able to, maybe even give you some more information on the unknown managers that are supposedly taking over. But because, as we all know, this kind of stuff moves a mile a minute, and everyone's been refreshing Twitter and whenever they're getting their news, because every couple of minutes there's another article about something elsewhere. I saw that the Athletic have put out their yearly review of Southampton. So yeah, fun times. Thank you for listening, everybody. We're a young growing podcast. Obviously, check us out on all the social medias. There'll be clips on TikTok and Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram and all those kind of places. We appreciate you as always. Thanks for sticking with us. And we will see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye bye.